Price. We will start. Okay, we're live now. Just a quick announcement to all the members. We're on a different sound system now, so your mic is always live. So, yes. So, yes. And the mic at the podium and at the table are live too, so when you're not talking, you want to make sure you put that down. And not point it up because it will get feedback. We will begin our meeting with public comment. We have a handful of people who submitted multiple cards, so we're going to limit speaking by each individual to 3 minutes. So we'll begin that process now. For Mr. Herman, I have public comment, item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. You can divide your time, your 3 minutes, to talk about all of those items and your comments to the public, beginning now. Start the time.
Usually start the time when the nigger gets up there, but if you want to go that way, Dawson, I could be a dick, a real big dick.
You're not on the topic.
I'm on the topic. The
You're
topic deals with
the meeting.
ongoing development and implementation by city homelessness and poverty. Policies, work, program, operations, and fuck you. Because when I was up at the transgender meeting today at noon 12, we had that discussion. Titus, chapter 1, verse 2. God does not lie, motherfucker.
You're off the topic.
No, I'm not. It has to do with homelessness. And homelessness has become the issue if you don't recognize it yet. Don't you see the homeless people on our streets? Or are you still ignoring it? Yeah, bite your goddamn lip. Because you know I'm right. And laugh about it, motherfucker. Because you know I'm right.
One more time off topic.
They're only intensifiers. Don't take me off topic on intensifiers. And going into Public Works Bureau sanitation. Stop taking people's belongings off the sidewalk and streets. Why can't you give them a home? Why do they have to go to shelters? Why do any one of you have a family member have to go to a shelter? I'll tell you why. Because this administration steals from the public. This administration of homelessness, revised homelessness poverty committee, steals from the public. Right, Mr. PDQ Price? So let's stick to the real issues. Now let's go to item 4, bitches. Los Angeles Police Department and verbal status updates. TMUs, Threat Management Unit. TROs, temporary restraining orders against the homeless. Keep homeless out of meetings, they don't say nothing. Keep homeless from participation, they say nothing. Suppress us. Suppress us. That's the harm you bring to the public and to the city of Los Angeles. And where's that fucking mayor? He's down there in Brazil. He's in Brazil. He should be here dealing with the poverty issues of homelessness. Yet the motherfucker's talking about my Second Amendment. Fuck you. My First Amendment is about homelessness. Hear me out, brother. Hear me out. I'm not mad. I like to use my voice to light up the arena here, because that's what it's all about. It's a war. A war on homelessness. The war on the crisis of homelessness. And for God fucking sake, do you get it, Titus? Do you get it, Titus? Not Tyson, Titus. Chapter 1, verse 2. God doesn't lie, and nor do I. Fuck TMUs and fuck TROs on homelessness.
Ms. Antonia Ramirez, you have cards on 4 items. You have 3 minutes to speak on items 1, 2, 3, and or 4. Starting your time now.
Very much, Jesus Christ. Okay, hi. Item number 2. 20th Century Fox Studios is here. Why don't they make a poignant, real, tangible, heartfelt movie on gang stalkings and homelessness? That will teach the world what the core of America is going through. And I guarantee you, it will hit a home run. Item number 2, this is a matter of principle. Homelessness is very expensive, and you have no privacy. I stopped drinking water, soda, and juice at about 6 p.m., so I don't have to go to the bathroom. The Music Center Grand Park opens at 5:30 a.m. and closes at 10 p.m., both Block 1 and Block 4. And again, you cannot drink anything at night or you're forced to use the streets. I don't use the streets. I hold it till early in the morning, and it is gut-wrenching. I wish we could have a 24-hour bathroom, shower, laundry, and storage facilities. Clean, safe, and secure, and hygienically pure. But we don't have that, and we're forced to live in the ghetto and gutter. Anyway, and number 3, item number, public comments. On August the 8th, 2016, in the evening, I went to Target, Alhambra Target at 2120 West Main Street, Alhambra, California, 91801. I am being bullied, gang-stalked by gangbangers and wetbacks all over, including even now Chinese. No matter where I go, they follow me everywhere. No, I am not mental and I am not delusional. As a homeless person, I have to go and get things every day because they ransack and rummage through my things. I have to replace my things every day. They go through your things, they rob you. So here I am at Target, going through, buying things. No matter where I go, I got the goddamn cell phones right in my face. So I tell the assholes, get off my face, leave me alone. Which is what they do. They box you in. If you look at Ted Gunderson, the retired ex-FBI agent, Ted Gunderson on YouTube, he explains in detail what gang stalking is. And so these goddamn assholes, gangbangers and wetbacks all over Target have followed me and stalked me and harassed me. And Stephen, a lovely Latino, comes up to me and says, we're going to have to escort you out. They don't see their video surveillance. They don't look at their video surveillance, but they come and attack me. I am one person up against a multiple group of thugs, cronies, wetbacks, and gangbangers. They call the Alhambra Police Department, and about 9:34, they show up. Officer McFarland and Ramirez, no relation. They were polite. They were decent, and they said, you are banned. You can no longer come into Alhambra Target, no longer. So I am banned from Target because I took on the bullies. Target
That's your time.
incites
Thank you.
bullying. Target incites bullying. Thank you.
Please sit down right
Thank
away.
you.
And on items 2, 3, and 4, we have Mellow Desire. Would you all stop disrupting the meeting? If you guys are going to disrupt, Miss Ramirez, if you're going to continue to disrupt the meeting, we're going to ask you to leave. You're still disrupting the meeting?
Hi.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mellow Desire. I'm a filmmaker for Inner City Youth, South LA activist, as well as Skid Row activist. I'm here today with my group LA Can, and there are several issues that we need to address. First off, in Skid Row, there is an increase of women and children in the tents. Operation Healthy Streets, or so-called cleaning the streets, some streets with no water. They're not even giving our tenants 72 hours warning before they pop up on them, but yet on tape, the chief officers that are supervising these washing of the streets are saying that they give the tenants 72 hours. Some notices are put 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock that morning, and some are not even aware that they're coming unless their stuff is being dumped. So these are the things that you guys got to be transparent about. One of the things that is personally dear to me is the fact that there are increase of homelessness, and you guys claim that you're advocating and meeting on taxpayers' dollars for this. Personally, the staff that you have is not one that's catering to the people. I find it appalling that in District 10 that I have to have Herb Wesson III have more cigarette breaks than actually answering his emails for constituent problems.
We've got to stay on the topic.
Yes, this is the topic. The topic is that we are the people and we're not being heard. So as we are going down the homelessness solutions that you guys have, which you don't have any, we need you to stop giving us red tape when we come to you with solutions for the problems that you're meeting up on. We need you to use actual water, bleach. If you're cleaning up the streets, give the people 72-hour notice. And for those that you are dumping their stuff without notice, you have to at least respect them and let them know that their items are not just junk. So these are some of the things that need to be fixed. And we ask that you guys not sit on this on your desk area and ignore the constant requests to meet with you. South LA and Skid Row are two of the biggest areas where you have, number one, incarceration, homelessness, and violence. And yet, the funding that you guys are getting are not going to the people. So we need to know, what do we need to do so you guys can actually respond and say, yes, let me fund this project so we can help homelessness. Let me fund this for the South LA youths that are dying every day. Because it's our children. It's our families that are suffering while you guys make the decision. So we just need to know, what is it that we need to do to you guys to actually move and listen.
Thank you. So, Mr. Clerk, we'll begin with item number 4. If you could read that into the record, please.
Yes, sir. Item number 4 is LA Police Department verbal status update relative to first responder training and the Homeless Outreach Partnership Endeavor team rollout.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll welcome Commander Chamberlain from LAPD to give us a report and take discussion on this matter.
Good afternoon. The HOPE team, again, it stands for Homeless Outreach and Proactive Engagement, and that's exactly what we have been able to achieve. We've had very good success. We rolled out our first HOPE team, went out on May the 11th, and that was an Operations Valley Bureau. Our teams are comprised of 1 sergeant and a total of 10 officers. The way the officers are selected and the way the sergeants are selected is we looked in the bureaus and we noticed without question that there was a lot of activity and a lot of work being done to address homeless issues and to support the homeless community, and they were done in different ways. We noticed that each division, they had a HOPE team or a HEART team or a transient car or somebody that was addressing community concerns as well as the concerns of the homeless population. And so we wanted to make sure that we pulled those officers in who already had a background, already had some knowledge and understanding about how and when and what they can and cannot do within that arena. So that team went out on May the 11th. We just entered our final, or 2 additional teams went out for Operations West Bureau and Operations Central Bureau. And those teams went out on Monday, August the 8th. The most important part about thinking of the HOPE teams is the fact that this is not a sole LAPD mission. The reason these HOPE teams are so vital, the reasons that I personally and this organization hopes they succeed, is because the yoke of responsibility is not solely on the shoulders of the LAPD. We really wanted to make sure that we collaborated with the other entities that can truly have an impact on the homeless population, can truly conduct outreach, can truly do a lot of things before it gets to the point of enforcement. So with that concept and with that idea in mind, we have collaborated with sanitation. We've also collaborated with LASA, and we have also worked in partnership with Department of Mental Health, as well as our own internal functions to deal with those issues. To give you an update and an idea on where we are at, since May the 11th, the OVB, the Valley HOPE team, they have conducted 125 cleanups along with sanitations, and I think that's a number to look at. But I think what's more important to look at is that referrals to the homeless populations, and just in Operation Valley Bureau, there was a total of 184 referrals for assistance to the homeless population. We also looked at refusals of service, and we had a total of 107 who refused service. When you look at also what we did as far as placement, we broke it down into several categories, and we used a matrix system to make sure that we were covering all of it. We looked at shelter within motels, within housing. We looked at our VA connections for our Veterans Administration. We looked at return to family, and then we looked at independent and long-term transitional housing. Out of that, the HOPE team in the Valley has been able to impact over 30 people. That is a huge number. Although we're dealing with the homeless population in the city of Los Angeles is somewhere right around 24,782. I know 30 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at 30 people that have been taken off of the streets, who have been in long-term the transient homeless population, and we're really given alternatives, again, I really think that speaks volumes about the HOPE team's success, because the HOPE team, unlike other officers, they have the opportunity to truly build relationships, truly work with those individuals, find out what their needs are, and then get those services in place in conjunction with our partners to make that happen. I had one individual, a story came out of Operation Valley Bureau where it was an elderly male, and he lived with his stepdaughter on the streets. And the stepdaughter was about 30 years old, and he was probably about 60 years old or so. He was a VA, so he had the options of being in VA housing. However, he did not want to leave the stepdaughter out on the streets, and so he refused to get any kind of housing. And so the HOPE team was able to take the time, working in conjunction with LASA, working in conjunction with the VA, to get housing for the daughter, and then get him into a substance abuse program through the VA, and then ultimately get him into an apartment through the VA. And so what was once a huge trepidation for him to leave the homeless environment, it was be able to get switched and get long-term housing based upon the officers and based upon the HOPE partnerships with LASA and with sanitation to really work on it. We had another individual, actually it was a family. They came from North Carolina. It was a mother and 2 children. They were 14 years old. Rico was the child. He was 14. He had health problems, so the first thing the HOPE officers were able to do was get him medical attention. Second thing they were able to do was find out why she came from North Carolina to Los Angeles. She came here to be a singer. That didn't work out, so she was kind of pretty much stuck. And so we were able to, one, get medical care for the son, which helped out a lot and build up a trust that was never there. And then 2, we were able to make sure there was contact that was done on behalf of LASA with the families back in North Carolina, and then facilitate that location back. We also had another success story with another individual who was long-term homeless in the valley. Huge amount of property, huge amount of items around a strip mall. That individual, we found out that he did have family in Palmdale. Contact was made with that family after a numbers of times, and this person has been out literally in that area of Devonshire for about 4 years. Contact was made with LASA support and with the help and with our officers. We found out where the family was in Palmdale. We made contact with that family, and they were subsequently connected, and that person is now off the street. Trucks were used by our LAPD officers who went out and actually got the trucks themselves and transported the individual's property to their residence out in Palmdale. I think it's another important thing when you look at, again, the referrals were 184, refusals of service were 107. That's a huge number of people that were contacted in a very short period of time. And I think, again, when you correlate that with the numbers of citation, there was only 7 citations that were issued with those numbers of contacts. There was only 6 warrants that were achieved, and there was only 19 misdemeanor arrests, which were based on open charges, again, which will happen. It doesn't matter if you're homeless, if you're a multimillionaire, if there's a law being broken and there's an open charge, that's part of what's going to happen with these HOPE teams. But what it also shows is that that was not the primary function. Criminalization was not the primary function. Enforcement was not the primary function. Trying to make a difference in people's lives was the primary function, and that's what happened. So again, OWB and OCB went out on August the 8th. We look forward to the same success. We have our next ComStat, which is coming up, a homeless ComStat, to address these issues and ensure that we're doing the right things and ensure that we're measuring the right things to validate if we're having success and if we're impacting. All of these things, again, were based on compassion. Compassion for the homeless, but also compassion for the neighborhoods and for the communities that have to deal with the homeless and with the issues that go with that. And so that's really the balance, and that's really the wire that we are walking as far as a law enforcement organization, as far as LAPD, is to really try to change the mindset and the strategies that we impact and how we move forward.
Questions, members? Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report. Glad to see operations in Operations West Bureau. I just want a couple questions about what you said. I much prefer to see LAPD working, as you're describing, with LASA and with social service agencies. You said that there were 184 referrals.
Yes.
30 wound up in placements. So 154 didn't. 30 actually in that period of time, not bad. I know how difficult it is to go through the process, so we'd like that process to be quicker. But of the 154, are all of those 154 now entered into the coordinated entry system?
And again, I'm going to leave that a little bit up to LASA, and I don't know if Mr. Lynn would want to come up, but that is the goal of it, to try to get that into the coordinated entry system. Everyone that does get referrals, again, it's referrals with the support of LASA as well as our officers in LAPD.
Good afternoon, Council Member Peter Lynn, Executive Director for LASA. So obviously, entering an individual into the coordinated entry system requires, voluntary engagement with that person. And some folks don't wish to engage in the intake, which is is a survey instrument. It can take a little bit of time. It also generally requires that we build some rapport with the individual before we attempt that. We do have an outreach contact module that's in the HMIS, and we do enter those contacts into HMIS. So we have a record of the engagements, we have a record of the contacts, we can keep track of how we're doing in terms of following through with somebody. But it's not the case that 100% of those people then we get a VI spit out. The intent is that we're entering those and we're following through and getting folks engaged with that, and that's generally the case over a period of time, but it's often not the case on a sort of a first encounter.
Do we know how many have been entered into CES so far? I'm assuming the 107 refusals certainly aren't, but of the 184 referrals, do we know how many are entered?
I don't have those data, but I'll bring those back to the council.
Yeah, when we do these updates on the HOPE program, I think that would be an interesting statistic to know, because in this case, I'm curious, what is a referral? Is a referral an actual contact with an agency or a caseworker, or is a referral someone's handed a piece of paper or a laminated card with a bunch of phone numbers on it?
These are transports, and they're active engagements. We're not giving people in information and saying, go do this. This is these are warm connections, hot connections. They're not cold connections.
It's actually, I'm not familiar enough with the service providers in the Valley, so let's assume we're talking about, if this were in Venice, this would actually be a transport to the St. Joseph Center or to SPY?
That's right, to a shelter or a connection to one of the service centers.
Okay. And of the 30 who've been placed, do we have a breakdown on what those placements are, whether they're rapid rehousing, motel vouchers, shelters?
Yeah. What we have right here, motels with housing, I have 4. VAs, we had 2. Return to family was a total of probably about 15. And then we had transition into long-term housing. We had about 3. And then there was some other information that we haven't entered yet, because the data that I'm looking at stopped on 8/6, and we've had some successes since then.
Okay.
So we are keeping track of that all as well.
And have you discovered in either your efforts to place the 30 who were placed, or in trying to make referrals for the 154, certain barriers? I think it's useful for us to know what barriers are, either to getting people to accept services, or those who've accepted, what the barriers are of getting them into them, so that we can work with LASA to make sure those barriers get torn down.
And again, this is the information that we looked at, and this is some of the data that does come back, because we wanted to find out who are we dealing with and who are the individuals that are requiring our services. And so as far as saying this is 100% scientific or something like that, I just want to throw that out in advance, that we're doing the best we can, and we are building our matrices and our practices as we unfold this event. But when you look at it, our officers they made contacts with 2 individuals that had 5150 issues. We found out that 56 of the individuals that were contacted had major mental health illness issues, which were directed. We had 103 who attested to and also basically stated that they have substance abuse issues. We had 19 veterans. We found that we had 17 that were gang members. who came up on the systems. We had 3 that were on parole and 57 that were on probation. So those are the kind of numbers and the details that we're trying to get in the weeds so that we really do know, just like what your question spoke about, is who are we dealing with and what are the barriers that are holding them. Because sometimes, like anecdotally, those 2 stories that I mentioned, it was some of the simplest barriers that kept the people out on the streets for the longest.
Well, yeah, and I'm curious even on a more granular level. I know from situations in my district, sometimes the barrier is someone doesn't have an ID or doesn't have a birth certificate. Or sometimes the barrier is someone doesn't qualify for a voucher because they've had an eviction in their past, or there just isn't a unit available to place someone. And the more we can get from LAPD or LASA, I'm not sure who's going to compile this, the better, because then we can really figure out how to build on successes by tearing down other barriers.
And that is exactly the philosophy that the HOPE teams were built on, was trying to address the big, small things that wouldn't seem like that big of a deal, but for someone to go to the DMV, go through that system and make that happen. And we've actually had some of our officers out in the OBB team who they've already confronted that, where they've actually made arrangements and they've gone to the DMV with the individuals, got them up to where they needed to be to get their ID, which then allowed them to get services outside of what they could have gotten without it. So those are the exact things that we're looking at.
So final question is, I appreciate that you shared those success stories. I think it's always important to hear those. I'm curious how, outside of this committee meeting, either LAPD or LASA intends to share those.
Well, what we have planned and what I hope comes to fruition through the mayor's office is that I hope that we do get an opportunity to have a press release on this and get some of this information out, because I think it does speak volumes that the city is trying something unique and something different. We actually had the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, came and spoke, actually met for about a half hour with LASA, with myself, with sanitation, and with the mayor's office, as well as the city attorney's office, to discuss our ComStat. It's the first time that she has ever, or anyone else has ever, really tried to implement a ComStat that specifically addressed homelessness. And within that concept model, again, that's where I think we're going to see the value. We're going to see our successes and we're going to see our failures, and we're going to see what we need to tweak, what we need to modify to make the system better. Because again, we are building and we are trying new things to address a long-term problem. And again, 30 out of 24,742, it doesn't sound like a lot, but we're making small steps to a huge, huge problem. And I really think that, again, it's the collaboration and it's the interaction that wasn't there maybe a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, that is now there, that we hope to keep gaining that momentum and that steam.
So, saying there have been 30 placements, that's one way of telling success stories. The way you told them here, though, when you told individual stories about the father and the daughter, for instance, that is a more powerful way to tell the story. And I know LASA has been beefing up staffing and has more of a PR department. I'd encourage the LASA to help with telling individual success stories. The what programs work is important here, but I think the public needs to know that there's individual success stories.
Yeah.
I don't know who the best service providers in Los Angeles are, but I'll tell you that PATH does a great job telling their success stories on social media, so that a lot of folks in my district say, oh, why isn't our agencies doing what PATH does? Our agencies are, but the success stories aren't out there. And I'll say that as someone who's trying to get homeless housing built in my district, it is a lot easier if the public actually believes there are success stories happening. And so it's important for us to advance the other solutions that those stories get told. So it's, you guys have to provide the info, I guess, to LASA, but I really encourage LASA to get in the success storytelling business, because it's how we build support for the other solutions that are in our strategy.
And sir, I completely agree with that, and that's something I think we have to look at, because again, it's a success not only for the homeless individual, but it's also a success for the community, because that individual, that father and that stepdaughter that were moved, they were there literally for about 4 years in the same place. They were in the back of an alleyway near a strip mall, and that community contended with that for a 4-year period with everything that goes with that. And so, again, it was a success story for them as well as, I think, an incredibly important success story for those people who got into placement now and are no longer sleeping in tents.
Thank you, Council Member. I really appreciate the feedback. We have a communications director, which is a full-time staffed position right now, and I think that's he's already hit the ground running, engaging with that. I mean, it has not been our focus. I will be candid to do this activity, but it is very important, and I really appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Mr. Price?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the report, gentlemen. This is an exciting opportunity, I think, this HOPE program. Certainly, it addresses the coordinated approach that we've been talking about doing, and I think it's significant. I'm just a little concerned, though. We've got the Northeast covered, San Pedro, Valley, West. Is this just a pilot effort? When might we see some expansion and at least some kind of unit in South LA? I mean, this is a big issue down here, and obviously, we're not going to be servicing folks in South LA to Northeast or the Valley or the West. And so it's just that in this interim period, there won't be any movement.
Yeah, and
South
Mr.
LA,
Mr. Price, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I want to assure you that we have our team, our South Bureau team, our Operations South Bureau team will be rolling out on October the 11th. Based upon their needs on personnel matters and the crime issues they're contending with in South Bureau right now, we felt it was better to hold off for a while and then go down and to address it that way. Again, all the bodies that are coming out for these HOPE teams are being loaned and harvested out of patrol. And so we do not have extra funding or extra resources. And so we are just really trying to realign our personnel that we have. But a team is coming. We wanted, again, to get the first team out to kind of give us the foundation of where we're moving at. And now that it's Section 2 teams, and we do have planned right after summer, the last team, which will be South Bureau, will be out.
Thank you. And I agree, too, the importance of telling stories of how our efforts are reaching individuals. And even if we're not broadcasting the name and all that kind of stuff, I think it is important for the community to know that a mother and father were assisted, or a mother and her 3 kids, or a single mom or a mom. We got to tell the story, and we have to do the deeds. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Cedillo?
What kind of support and collaboration are you getting from the county on these efforts?
From who, sir?
The County of Los Angeles?
County right now, we've not gotten a lot. We haven't really reached out for a lot. We've kept it a lot within the city. I think LASA, again, they are the subject matter expertise in what they do. So that is where I'm sure they'll have that connection. I'll let them speak on that.
So we're working with, sorry about that. We're working with both the Sheriff's Department and LAPD. They both agreed to focus on a post-certified curriculum for addressing homelessness. They agreed to the same curriculum. Sheriff's Department is initiating the rollout of that, and they wanted to engage. We have an advisory group of homeless and formerly homeless individuals that we work with at LASA, and Sheriff's Department representatives brought that curriculum to our homeless advisory group to review it with them and get feedback and input on that curriculum. It was a very powerful and moving engagement with them. So Sheriff's Department is working off of a similar game plan and a similar curriculum. So there is a collaboration in terms of what the focus is.
What about from county probation and other people dealing with substance abuse?
So on the county side, the first responder, the primary lead is the Sheriff's Department, and so they are engaging with probation. But we are working with probation in a number of different outreach. So probation does have outreach workers, and they work county-wide. So they are, for example, working with our teams, multidisciplinary teams on Skid Row. There's a probation outreach officer who's working with the homeless embedded with that effort as well. So they are part of the engagement. The Sheriff's Department is the lead.
Then are you working with our stabs and the home teams in terms of briefing us so that we know how to interface and have the right relationship with your office?
Well, I'll talk from LAPD. We've had incredible success with all of your chiefs of staff and with everybody who's been involved. actually the foundation of a lot of these teams was based on those conversations and based upon the haves and the needs of the different council districts. And so that relationship has been incredibly strong. In our ComStat, our homeless ComStat, we have almost all of the chiefs of staff involved, especially in the Homeless and Poverty Committee, actually in that room with us to hear the information firsthand. I have been extremely candid and extremely transparent about what's working, what's not, and what support or what we can do or what we can't do. So the relationship's been very positive.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. A couple questions in a couple different categories. I appreciate the report and the discussion that we've had this far. I had specific questions about the felonies, misdemeanors, and warrants. I'm wondering sort of what the character of the warrants that are being served are, and sort of what your operations are, because I know that the police department has some discretion about what warrants get served and which ones don't, and so I'm just wondering how you go about that in this situation. Is it any different than a police officer making a traffic stop, or is it are there special procedures, or is it just we run the person's ID and figure out what's what?
Yeah, I would have to say, when just looking at these numbers, I don't have each of the specific charges that went with these warrants, but when I look at these numbers and I see that only 6 warrants were used or actually implemented, that shows to me that there is a huge amount of discretion being used on behalf of the officers that are out there on the field. Again, when you're looking at about 184 referrals, 107 refusals, and 125, that's a huge amount of, and this doesn't even count the number of contacts they're having out there. I can guarantee you it doesn't come close to it. So to have only 6 warrants that have been served, there was reasons for that. I don't know what they are. I don't know to the extent, but that's a very, very small number. What I can tell you is not happening is they are not going in and just running people's names and getting information from them and then taking people just for warrants. They're not writing citations. When I look at our citations numbers for the teams there too, again, very, very small number of citations, a total of 7 citations. So you can see from that the philosophy is not going in there and citing and then coming back 3 months later or 6 months later and running people and getting now warrants where we're going to get you off the street. That's not what this is about. It's not what it's for. This is a new theory. It's a new process. And again, that's, I think, being shown and demonstrated in the numbers.
Just for frame of reference, and if you don't know the answer to this, it's fine, but do you have just kind of a thumbnail comparison? Say there were 184 traffic stops. Typically, how many of those would be warrants versus 184 contacts here with 6 warrants?
Yeah, sir. You know what? I really don't have that.
Okay,
I don't want to give you bad information. I would completely be just talking off. I'm not sure.
And then the misdemeanors, sort of is it your sense that they're misdemeanors for something that's happening in that moment, or is it a misdemeanor for the 5611? Is it or is it just a range of things?
Yeah, it's not for 5611. It's probably for just a myriad of different things, probably narcotics, paraphernalia, something like that. That's what it'd be used for. And again, when I look at those numbers, it shows 19. And again, that's spread out over an entire bureau. So if you look at Van Nuys, West LA, North Hollywood, Foothill, Devonshire, Mission, and Topanga, across the board, about the average is you have about 5 to 6 in each of those divisions. So it's spread out over a very, very large area.
That's good. And then I had a question about the mental illness, sort of the 5150 mental illness and substance abuse. It seems the 5150 numbers seem strikingly low to me, and I was just wondering, sort of what the threshold for that is. My expectation would have been that you found a lot more of that, or a lot more of where people are both, so there's substance abuse and mental health, or substance abuse and 5150.
Right. Again, with the 5150, that was an actual hold that were put on place with someone who was in one of the encampments out of the locations. It looks like those holds actually took place. There was 2 that were in Van Nuys. And again, I don't want to give you bad information, but I believe one of them was a really elderly woman who had some major, major mental health problems, and she couldn't care for herself, and she was a safety to herself, and that's why she got this the mental health hold. And then the other one, the 56 contacts with the mental health illness, again, that's what they were using as far as their contacts, but with conversations on them. I don't know if Pete, if you have anything else you could detail.
Well, I just would reinforce that the threshold for an actual hold is quite high, that the person is actually a danger to themselves, and that's where it would differentiate from somebody who may well have serious mental illness, but is not deemed at that time to be unable to care for themselves or a danger to themselves or other, and therefore would not be eligible for a 5150 involuntary hold.
Thank you. And lastly, Commander, so, I think excellent, really poignant success stories in terms of interactions with people who were homeless who got housing or who got relief from their situation. Did you have success stories from neighborhoods or neighbors who were, had an encampment that they felt was in a very dangerous place that got dealt with, and the people in the encampments got help and the neighborhood got cleared up?
Yes, sir. I don't have specifics on those, but I know that if we went back out to those 30 places where those homeless individuals, where there was success, I can guarantee you that the community would have a very similar message as well as far as success. And that's something that we're going to look at. Again, one thing we're going to do too, once all 4 teams are up, we're going to pull all 4 teams together and talk about, hey, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to tweak, what do we need to change, what's positive, what's negative, what do we know that we don't know. That's what we're going to, this is going to be a constant analysis and a constant measurement of our successes and our failures.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I would just sort of amend my colleagues' comments about the success stories. I think the success stories of homeless people are very, very important, but I think for residents, they're important too. Our communities, particularly in my district, there's a quandary. People feel like, on the one hand, nothing's being done, but two, they don't want to they don't necessarily want people, rousted and thrown in jail or harassed or anything like that, for the crime of being poor or on the street. At the same time, they want the encampments dealt with. And so if we are putting forward a program that tries to do that and is having success doing that, it would be great if we could get some testimonials from neighbors on the records as a part of those success stories. So thank you both for the report today, and we look forward to getting more data in the future, especially as you roll out to South LA. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have public comment on item number 4. I have Mary Ramirez, Tom Grody, and Harvey Shells.
My name is Tom Grody. I'm a Skid Row resident. The book just came out by Forrest Stewart, who's a sociologist, spent 5 years doing street outreach and street-level research in Skid Row. His book is called Down and Out and Under Arrest. Here's some words from the LA Times in a review. For Stewart, therapeutic policing legitimizes punitive treatment of the worst off, or rather, turning the police into social workers, and they make abysmal social workers, we are told, benefits not the street dwellers, but the developers who can now make a profit in the domesticated neighborhood. Down and Out and Under Arrest is thus a well-supported critique of therapeutic policing, and by extension, of similar paternalistic efforts to help the poor by harassing them into good behavior.
Valley. I also go to a church in Wilshire, and we have outreach workers in the church. And in our soup kitchen, Willis, who works with veterans, he does outreach.
Can you talk a little closer to the mic?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, he does outreach, and our homeless minister, she also helps with outreach. So our Bishop, Catherine, has gone to I guess you would call it, the Hope meetings, and they would have their really great success stories and everything. And I agree the outreach workers are fine. In fact, I'm from the Valley. I met my outreach not through the street, through the Connect days. It took me 2 years to get an outreach worker, and another three months to get a caseworker, and finally I'm going into housing. What, the minute's up? What?
Time's up. Finish your thought.
Well, I'm for the outreach workers, but I'm not for them being forced on people and having their stuff taken away.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Harvey Shells. I am a state advocate for the homeless for California. I'm also with LA Can today. And I'm also a gentleman that has been homeless multiple times over 30 years. I like the fact that you want to engage, but if you want to help us, talk to us. Ask us what help us to keep our street clean. Ask us the things that we need to do in order to help you help us. But if you just come in with your plans, it seems offensive. But first of all, we don't see the officers as folks of protect and serve. We see people that have been taken and done things to us. So build a relationship with us. Allow us, include us into your plans. Include us into the fact of letting you know what we need and how we need to put these things together in order that we can keep our street clean, that we can have trash cans, that we can do the things we need to do to get off the street. Because if I've been homeless for 30 years and now I can stand before you as a drug counselor and a state advocate, it's not that we're not able to do things, it's the fact that we don't have the opportunity to be able to do the things we need to do. We need your help. Help us.
Thank you.
Help you.
Thank you. Jojo Smith, Gary Boatwright, General Dogon.
Jojo Smith, Los Angeles Community Action Network. I've been coming here. This is the 17th meeting y'all have had. Y'all not getting people off the streets. You keep letting LAP be social workers. LAP is not social workers. LASA is not social workers. LASA is a funder that funds organizations. We need to figure out a way to get housing, put money into housing, not keep criminalization going. House keys, not handcuffs.
My name is Gary Boatwright. I'm a homeless American citizen residing on Skid Row. And as far as 5611 and stealing people's property at the point of a gun, Sergeant Walker stole my property before you people even authorized it. This is the same Sergeant Walker that gave a 71-year-old woman in a wheelchair a ticket for sitting down in her wheelchair. That's how the LAPD rolls. Instead of setting up storage sites for stolen property, just stop stealing our property. Because everybody on Skid Row knows when a cop comes their way, two things are going to happen. You're going to jail, they're going to steal your stuff. LAPD has never done anything good for anybody on Skid Row. You know, they can have very accomplished liars saying something different, but lying under those is what cops do. You know, you are the people that made L.A. the most hateful city in America. Nobody hates on homeless people and stomps them down like L.A. and the LAPD. In closing, just let me say, the main idea I'd like you to take away is that you suck. Individually and collectively, you suck.
Over $1 billion spent on police and giving so-called homeless services to people on Skid Row in the last 10 years. And here, 10 years later, Skid Row still had the highest concentration of homelessness in the nation. Why? Because resources and money continue to be given to LAPD, who can continue to give us these failure-ass results, right? Second, this is the second plan for hope that you had. Jose Rizar, I don't know why he ain't here, he's part of this committee, spearheaded the first one that crash landed. Now you're talking about another plan for hope. Quit using these names, hope, you know what I'm saying, and just go on and solve the problem. You know what it takes. Also, LAPD ain't social workers like folks had already said. The outreach team, the Hope outreach team, is out offering services that homeless people already know about. So it ain't. That's why you ain't gonna get no numbers and no results of that. And people, third of all, ain't gonna accept services from the same people that's harassing them, arresting them, and taking their property every day. They ain't even gonna talk to them, right? And then third of all, just like my brother said, house keys, not handcuffs. This is the 17th meeting. Every meeting has been on criminalization. This is coming into the
Thank
homeless
you. That's your
criminalization
time.
committee. Put some resources on the block for homeless people now.
Thank you. All right, we will receive that report and thank everybody who gave testimony to it and move to item number 3. Mr. Clerk.
Yes, sir. Item number 3 is Public Works Bureau Sanitation Report. and CAO to report in response to a budget motion relative to the instruction for the LAPD, Bureau of Sanitation, and LASA to report to the Homelessness and Poverty Committee on resource needs and policies related to the expansion of the existing homeless outreach partnership endeavor teams. This item was also referred to the Energy and Environment Committee as well as the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee.
Thank you. We have representatives from the CAO and from our Bureau of Sanitation and from LASA. And from the Los Angeles Police Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, honorable council members. My name is Adel Haj Khalil. I'm the Assistant General Manager for the Bureau of Sanitation, LA Sanitation. What we have before you is in the adopted budget of fiscal year 2016-17, funding in the amount of $3.66 million was provided in the unappropriated UB balance for the implementation of public right-of-way cleanups, and mainly with the focus on two areas. One is the HOPE teams, and the other one is the expansion of the involuntary storage areas. The purpose of the HOPE teams is twofold, and I think that was really echoed by the council members and the chair and Commander Chamberlain. The purpose of the teams is, one, improve the city's overall response to the complex and diverse needs of the unsheltered homeless community, and two, support healthy neighborhoods. The HOPE teams will accomplish this by linking homeless individuals with appropriate services, respond to neighborhood issues and concerns as called by the recently adopted LA Municipal Code 5611 that was amended, and develop strategies for dealing with situations that may arise among unsheltered homeless individuals, including those experiencing mental illness and substance abuse disorders. The HOPE teams actually address several strategies that in the adopted City Council and Mayor's City Comprehensive Homelessness Strategy Report. The HOPE teams will basically, our expansion of what's being done now, will have basically 4 teams across the city in the city's bureaus, Valley, West, Central, and South. We will have staff from sanitation dedicated to the HOPE teams. So each team will have 4 staff from sanitation embodied in this HOPE team for each of these 4 teams. 2 are environmental compliance inspectors. 1 is the maintenance laborer, and 1 is a trash truck driver. In addition, we will have LASA team working embedded there. Will be 4 teams from LASA who are outreach experts present with the team, along with a team of PD officers assigned to support this effort. One of the efforts that we're looking at is the current HOPE teams that we're looking at does not have dedicated sanitation staff or LASA staff working with them fully. What we're doing right now is aligning the HOPE teams with ongoing cleanups that are scheduled as part of the Clean Streets LA program. As you know, we have 4 strike teams now with your help across the city working from sanitation, working with LASA and the council offices to conduct cleanups across the city. That has gone from 2 to 3, now to 4, which is great, doing well. But the thing that we did not want to do is to distract resources away from the scheduled work that's in place. So dedicating staff to the HOPE teams will allow us to continue providing the services to the community, to the council offices, and the neighborhoods without being impacted, while providing the support that's needed as part of this HOPE teams. And the way I look at the HOPE teams are 4 teams that are nimble, mobile, across the city, providing outreach, communication with the homelessness, providing services to the communities. And if there's anything that needs to be done, taken care of, that addresses access to property, issues with ADA compliance, anything that's needed, the team is there, they can be responsive. We don't have to wait and have something scheduled. It can be done immediately, and that's provided in the 5611 that you adopted. So what we're really asking for is for you to appropriate funding for a couple of things. One is for the sanitation staff to basically be able to support 17 staff, 4 for each team, and 1 public and community outreach specialist. That's essential because of what you just described, Mr. Chair and council members. Telling the story and communicating what we're doing is an essential element, and also providing the necessary support for the cleanups. In addition, we have also funding that we're asking for to be allocated for the LASA team to have 4 team members to improve the outreach, to improve the communication and the connection with the community as part of these HOPE teams. And that's basically will allow us to have authorization for sanitation for 17 positions, and also for the funding, appropriation of the funding, and addition appropriation for funding for LASA. The second biggest issue that we are looking at, and the biggest challenge that you have recognized in your discussions at this committee and through deliberation at council, is involuntary storage and voluntary storage. One of the biggest concerns, as you know, is if we did not have enough storage available, we cannot do cleanups. That's a big issue. The first thing we have done is we have a single location in the city right now that accepts involuntary storage. That's basically anything that we find unattended on the streets. We go through it to identify what's hazardous, what's not, and anything that's clean, we bag, tag, and store for 90 days, and we put a notice. But the only location that we have in the city is downtown in Skid Row. That location was getting full, so to address that, we moved it to our sanitation yard on 7M Mission, where we have a storage facility to allow us to continue to provide the services and the cleanups. In this report, you'll see that we're expanding, adding 4 new involuntary storage locations in sanitation yards across the city to allow us to provide easy access, because the less we travel, the more effective we are in the cleanup, and we can put the collected items in involuntary storage that's close to the location. It'll be managed through LASA and Chrysalis. They'll be conducting the inventory. They'll be communicating with the public. A phone number is provided. A call can be made. It'll be posted, and the person can call, and there'll be arrangements made for the person to be connected with their personal belongings. That's a huge step in the right direction that will allow us to support the HOPE teams, plus also will allow us to support the 4 Clean Streets LA teams that are cleaning across the city every day. So what you have here is also an appropriation to LASA for that effort to provide the staffing and resources for the 4 involuntary storage locations across the city. To me, it's exciting that we are moving forward, that we are providing the services to the homeless community, plus also to the neighborhoods and the community. And the partnership that you have with the HOPE teams is something that is going to get better and better by providing dedicated resources from LASA and sanitation to work hand in hand with the community and PD on addressing the needs of the community, and also ensuring that the unsheltered homeless community is provided the services and the connection that they need, and also the neighborhoods are also being responded to and provided the attention that's needed. So we ask you that to support the recommendation that we have before you, so we can start the process of expanding the HOPE teams and ensuring that we have the resources needed. So thank you.
Trina Unzicker, I'm here with the Office of the CAO. That was a very complete overview, in my opinion, of the report, content by sanitation. Our comments are really geared toward the recommendations, so I'll just give you a quick recap of some of the technical aspects of how we're moving the money in the report. So the recommendations in the report are asking for about $1.9 million for sanitation to cover salaries, and that's specific to 17 new resolution authority positions and some other costs, plus about $340,000 to cover reimbursements to a sanitation special account for the use of vehicles. And then those recommendations also provide about $1 million of funding to LASA to cover 17 ERT-related positions, and those are to complement the cleanup implementation, along with $415 for Chrysalis to assist in handling the involuntary storage. We also are here to provide some information and have a discussion regarding sanitation's ability to fill those positions on a timely basis. And we also are prepared to describe some work that we've been doing with the CLA's office and with sanitation to be able to determine a modified cap rate, to be able to figure out an accurate and consistent way to capture related costs. We also have some alternative recommendations that we'd like to suggest for the transfer of funds. The fund transfers occur in a slightly different manner than they do for city departments. The funds flow through HSID to LASA, so we do have some alternative recommendations to offer. And we're also available to discuss the impact of what is one-time funding. This, of course, the UB funding represents one-time funding to the city, but this will become an ongoing cost to the city that will need to be budgeted in future years. So LASA, sanitation, police, and our department are available to answer any questions you have.
Questions, colleagues? Senator Price, Senator Cedillo.
Just one. Have we confirmed with Chrysalis that they have the capacity to do the staffing at both the voluntary and the involuntary?
Yes, it's our understanding that they're game for it.
Because we're talking about 4 involuntary and at least 2 voluntary that I know of, the one in my district and Mr. Buscaino as well.
They're prepared to do that, yes.
Okay. And what are the anticipated staffing levels for voluntary versus involuntary? I assume that it's a greater staffing and a more intense need at the voluntary than the involuntary, in terms of at least public interaction, but maybe not in terms of management of materials and stuff.
That's correct. It depends on the site. The involuntary storage, the way the involuntary storage works is that it is stored in a central location. Requests are made to retrieve belongings, and those belongings are retrieved by Chrysalis personnel and delivered to the person. So one question would be just ensuring that we have the volume, the staffing capable to do both of those things. And the size of the site really does matter in terms of how many staff there. A smaller site could be handled by a couple of staff.
Sure. I'm envisioning that having a voluntary storage facility in Venice will probably mitigate the need to a certain extent for extensive use of Hyperion, because a lot of the work you do there, people presumably, if the program is successful, will be using the voluntary storage.
I would assume so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just curiosity on the involuntary storage. Is the thinking that downtown would remain the central point for that for the foreseeable future, or do you expect to disperse that throughout the city in the coming years?
For a permanent location?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the CEO is working hard on identifying permanent involuntary, and that's why we wanted to do something quick, and the only way for us to do it quick is to use sanitation yards and have temporary locations there. So we believe that at some point we will transition from a temporary locations at the yards to more permanent that's being now discussed as provided by your instruction during budget. So at this point, we're doing temporary, but then as soon as we have permanent, we'll just transition to the permanent locations.
Excellent. Thank you. Senator Cedillo?
So what are your thoughts on when we get the voluntary infrastructure in place and the protocols for that? I mean, why isn't that the priority versus the involuntary?
I'll speak from an operational point of view, Senator, and is the biggest concern that we have right now is making sure that we don't invoke an item in 5611 that can stop our cleanup. If we don't have sufficient involuntary storage, we're required to stop cleanup, and none of us want to do that. We had a concern, and we see it happening, that by the increase in cleaning we're doing through the 4 additional teams we're doing, the HOPE teams, and it's increasing the volume. And so we are doing a first step. This is a first step It's not the only step. This is something to get us ensuring that the cleanup continues. So these are 4 temporary involuntary storage. I know there is work being done through the CEO on identifying permanent, voluntary, and involuntary locations. They have to secure the locations, the area, a lot of work being done, and I think he'll be updated regularly on that by the CEO, but they can also answer if they're available.
Yeah, those recommendations will be flowing through the Homeless Services Committee and also to this committee. We'll be reporting on that in the future.
Senator Price?
So just a follow-up question then. So how are involuntary storage issues in the 9th District, for example, being handled at the 7th Street?
It'll be done at the 7th Street location, 7th and Mission, and at the existing location in Skid Row. The good thing is what we have right now, which is the good news to our homeless community, is they can pick up the phone and call a number that's going to be posted, and we would work through with them on how we connect them with their personal belongings. So it's actually not expecting them to drive downtown or drive to a location. We will work on that, and Chrysalis will provide that connection. So we'll work with them to ensure that they connect with them and say, okay, where do we meet you, how we can get the stuff, what after the personal belongings have been identified. To me, that's a concern that was raised by your committee, by the council, to ensure that there is distance, that you're not expecting the homeless people to travel long distance. So that's being done. But I think
that's in operation now, or that's going to be.
We're going to start the operation. Right now, the only location we have is single, which is,
I understand.
And we're asking people to go there. But if there's a need for us to connect, we will do that. Our sanitation staff will do that. With the approval of this action by your committee and council, LASA will provide us support to free our staff to do the cleanup and the work that needs to be done. So this report will help provide Chrysalis through LASA the ability to provide that service and free our current resources to do what needs to be done.
All right, thank you.
Just to follow up so everybody's crystal clear. So at this moment, if someone leaves a tent and a bike on the street in, say, San Pedro, the notice is posted, come back, it's still there, that property is brought downtown?
At this point, yes.
And there'll be a number there where the person can call, and then there's a way for them to get help to get downtown to get it. Is that what I hear you saying?
At this point, we do it through sanitation staff on a as-needed basis. It's being formalized through this action, through having Chrysalis take this over.
Right.
And Chrysalis will do that. I think it'll be a lot more smoother having Chrysalis do it versus our resources that are doing the cleanup having to come back downtown, pick up. But we provide that service now if needed.
So, yeah.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, it's a delivery service, not a pickup service. So the sanitation, the material is delivered to the location where the person needs it or wants it. It's not that they have to come to central, downtown to pick up their material. It is a delivery service.
So we pick things up and then we take them back to people?
It's a requirement that it's
required by the law.
Anytime there is unattended property and you have to remove it, once you have unattended property required by the law and by 5611, that we have to provide a storage for 90 days and a bag tag and store. It's the law that we have required. The interesting thing that we're trying to get to, which I think is something that your council have and your committee has directed us to do, is to have the distance where the storage is put closer to where the pickup is. That's something that I think the issue that we had is we had one central location and this is something that we're working through, and that's something we are providing that, and we are protective of the personal belongings, and we have a responsibility to protect that for 90 days, and we will do that.
So, but this is, just to be clear, this is different than when the city impounds other property like an automobile the owner has to go to a place, a tow yard, and get it. In this case, that doesn't happen. We actually take it back
And
to the person.
exactly, our proposal right now is to take it back and connect the material, the personal belongings with the person. As part of this proposed effort that we have, we do it in sanitation. We're doing it at this point. There is one location in the city that person can go to. However, if they cannot they can call, and our staff will provide that service at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm learning, so please pardon me. Appreciate you all's report. We will take public comment on this matter now, beginning with Harvey Shells, Sylvia Deschanay, Gary Boatwright, and Mary Ramirez. 1 minute each. Yeah, your time's starting already, so it's hard out there.
I'm rolling. Once again, I'm Harvey Shells. I'm a state advocate and all those things, but the bottom line is everything they just shared. Wouldn't it be great that you gave some of those jobs to the people that are homeless and then they can get out of poverty? Wouldn't it be great? You want me to come and you take my stuff that you don't see. I call you, you bring it back to me. I don't have an address. Where you bring it back to? That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe that's just me that heard that. Then the other thing is, we do want clean streets. We do want things to get help to do things, but we need your help to help us do that. Don't put a Band-Aid. The situation is that we need homes. We need somewhere to live. If you put people in a house, imagine if I was able to do it, if you was to house these people and house them first, and then what the 1380 with Holly Mitchell bill is that we're trying to push. House them first. Find out what they need. Help them get to what they want to do. Do something besides what you guys are talking about.
Your time. Folks should know that Chrysalis does do employment services, and it involves some of the work that's laid out in these contracts. Next.
My name is Sylvia Hernandez, and I just really want to say there's no need to put more money from the budget to create these services. When with a community, we see the inconsistencies of this creation of new teams that they are just helping to take away their properties from the homeless people. We are witnessing, the inconsistencies as I can see it clearly when they report it. They really don't know how to answer a lot of your questions because they don't have the information from real experience from the people. I see that there's very compelling stories and testimonials about stories of people taken out of the streets, but that's very, I don't believe it, because we see how inconsistent is the way they work on the streets. If they clean up one street, outside of some businesses, they don't clean the rest of the people's streets.
That's your time, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Herman, sit down. Don't stand back up again. And Ms. Desire, I have to ask you to not stand in the aisle when folks are speaking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dejanay Dozier. I'm here with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. First of all, everybody wants clean streets, okay? But nobody wants their property stolen. And this program is stealing people's property, putting it storage to the point where they can't even go back and get the property. Your man fumbling over his words because he's lying. They're not going to work at all to clean the streets, but to steal people's property. So the solution is to adequately clean the streets, period. Clean them with water and bleach for real, okay? And the other solution is people need bathrooms on the streets. The other solution is people need trash cans on the streets. This is like Waste Management 101, and y'all not doing that. Y'all criminalizing people on the streets, period. And the last thing is that any outreach needs to not be accompanied by a cop with a gun.
Thank you. That's your time.
Once Again, my name is Gary Boatwright. I'm a homeless American resident. Been residing on Skid Row for about 6 years because you people haven't given us any way out. Don't lie about housing. We got housing with bed bugs. Don't lie about healthy streets. You have allowed us 50 lousy trash cans, and you can't even get them picked up more than 2 or 3 times a week. Trash cans, a lousy 50 trash cans, sit there 2-3 days without getting picked up. Nobody expects the people that created the problem through decades of neglect and abuse to solve the problem. You can pretend you care about healthy streets, you can pretend you care about safe streets, and pretend you're doing something to provide housing. Homelessness in LA is worse than any place in America. LAPD cops shoot more people than any police department in America. You expect us to trust anybody in this room with a solution to our problems? I don't think so.
Thank you.
Mary Ramirez, and you steal property from people, you give it back, you steal it, and you give it back. It causes panic attacks. You don't have time to work on your housing. You don't have time to deal with your caseworker. You don't have time to deal with your outreach worker. It just leaves one giant mess. You need voluntary housing, voluntary storage. That's the only thing that works. Stealing. I heard of a man who was in a tent. A skip loader came around and tried to knock the tent down. That could lead to lawsuits, and that's all I have to say.
JoJo Smith, Los Angeles Community Action Network. Yes, we want our streets clean, but the thing of it is how they doing it. They're not even cleaning. They're blowing it. They're leaving mud puddles. I've been out there 2 weeks in a row out there with the street cleaners, and I had to tell them there's syringes on the ground. They're just walking over them. So why are we going to give money to people that's not even taking care of? I can submit pictures to y'all of mud puddles after they spray. They're not pressure washing. They're spraying. They're blowing. They're just blowing water. They're not using chemicals. They're just wasting our money. We need to take this money that we want to put into this and put it into the housing, because house keys, not handcuffs, is the way out of this. That's how you end homelessness, is housing. Not giving more money to LAPD, not giving more money to LAHSA. LAHSA already gets enough money from the federal government. We need to start giving money to housing.
Thank you. All right, we got Robert Golston and Miranda Reese on item 3.
Hi, my name is Mandy Reese. I'm known as the Street Angel. I do community activation or activities. Anyway, I wanted to...
Mr. Herman, sit down one more time.
I wanted to share some proactive and positive solutions to the homeless problem. I really think that if we can get them involved in the community, like picking up trash, painting over graffiti to reduce gang violence and defacing of buildings, recycling more, increasing that efforts, picking up trash at the beaches to reduce pollution in the oceans, and having community gardens that help feed the homeless people that are worked over by the homeless people. It gives them something to do. It gives them a purpose in the community. And in exchange, they get housing and food. And we overhaul abandoned houses into community shelters for these people who are doing community work. So it takes them off the street. It gives them a place to stay and put their things, and they're doing proactive things in the community that better everybody. And tree planting is another thing we need, and they can volunteer at local nonprofits.
Thank you. Mr. Herman, you're disrupting the meeting. It's the last warning. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Robert Golston, and I'm here because I want to get my message across to someone who would talk to me, and the people aren't here. I know how to fix the homeless situation in the United States, not just this city. But I have a program here I put together a few months ago, and it involves money, but it comes out of none of the taxpayers' pockets. And we can eliminate this situation in America, not just Los Angeles. So anyone want to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to them about this because it involves the powers that be here. I wish the mayor was here. I'd talk to him directly. But that's what I have to say right now. But anyone talk to me, I got this program here. It will work.
Thank you so much. General Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Jeff, Skid Row community activist. I just want to respond to Mr. Hatskill's presentation. I appreciate your inquiry in regards to the San Pedro example. The problem is, if someone from San Pedro shows up, how are they going to prove? We're always asked, can you prove what items are yours? So if they have a tent and a bicycle, how are they going to prove that that's their property? And then they won't get released and they won't get their property back. So in essence, they're still in people's property. So what is the process of identification process to where homeless people can identify whose stuff belongs to? I don't care if they have to pick it up in San Pedro, pick it up anywhere else in the city of Los Angeles, or even if Bureau of Sanitation brings it back to them, how are they going to know who the property belongs to if it was abandoned to begin with? Thank you.
So thank you. That concludes public comment for this item. Mr. Clerk, can you read what is before us, including the amendments from the CAO?
What's before us is the report from the Bureau of Sanitation, and the amendments are a replacement for recommendations 4, 5, and a new recommendation, the 7th recommendation. And I believe the CAO will read those recommendations into the record.
So there are going to be 2 replacement recommendations. Those are for numbers 4 and 5. And then there's a new recommendation to be added. The new recommendation number 4 is establish a new account within Affordable Housing Trust Fund entitled LASA Hope Teams and appropriate $1,021,000 from the unappropriated balance. Fund number 158, account number 580213, which is for the implementation of public right-of-way cleanup, to the new account to support 4 Hope Teams. Replacement recommendation number 5 reads, establish a new account within the Affordable Housing Trust Fund entitled Public Right-of-Way Cleanup Regional Storage and appropriate $415,000 from the unappropriated fund titled Implementation of Public Right-of-Way Cleanup to the new account to expand the regional capacity for involuntary storage of unattended personal belongings removed during the course of cleanup. So the new recommendation is going to be recommendation number 7, and that reads, instruct the Housing and Community Investment Department to negotiate and execute an amendment to the Housing and Community Investment Department General Fund contract with LASA to include the new funding and amend the scope of work for the new Hope Teams and the expansion of regional capacity for involuntary storage.
Excellent. So I'd make a motion that we adopt as amended.
As amended. Yes, sir.
It's been moved and seconded. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order.
Yes, sir.
All right. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is a CLA and a CAO verbal status update relative to funding for Los Angeles County's Homeless Initiative.
So we're supposed to hear from Ms. Chavez and Mr. Wickham. All right.
Hello, good afternoon. Yolanda Chavez with the CAO. This will be very brief. As you know, unfortunately, the county pulled their proposed ballot initiative for a marijuana tax for recreational marijuana just a few weeks ago. Their last day to really act on an additional proposal would have been yesterday at their meeting. The official deadline is Friday, August 12th, but since they were not able to reach agreement on any additional proposals of yesterday, we don't expect anything to happen the remainder of this week. We do understand from the county that they are beginning to explore options for the March ballot, but at this point, there will be no county November ballot for, to generate resources for homeless services or initiatives.
Ivania Solbar with the CLA's office. The funds that the county would have generated were the marijuana would have been somewhere between 78 million to 130, and this was primarily for services.
Excellent, thank you. So that leaves us with the ballot that Angelenos will see in November. The only measure impacting homelessness directly will be the homelessness bond that's originating here with the City of Los Angeles, and that will be for facilities only. So that'll be only for house keys.
For housing, yes, for housing and facilities.
Excellent, excellent. Comments, colleagues? Mr. Bonin?
For what it's worth, I just want to give a shout out to Supervisors Ridley Thomas and Kuehl, who I think worked remarkably hard to try to get the best proposal on the ballot, which would have been the millionaires tax. And I think their leadership was incredible. I hope they find a way to get something on the ballot in the spring so that we can have the services that match the housing that we're building. And also, for what it's worth, I think that Governor Brown's behavior was a disgraceful abandonment of leadership, moral, political, and otherwise, by roadblocking that and refusing to put it on and simultaneously refusing to support a state of emergency would help us here. To the extent that we've all been working together, our efforts have been slowed and had hurdles put in front of them by Governor Brown.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Mr. Senator Cedillo or Price? Good. Good. Excellent. Thank you all for your report. We will receive and file this as there are no public comment cards, and continue to keep our eye on the prize for November, when the residents of Los Angeles will have an opportunity to weigh in on this matter. Item number 1, to close.
Item number 1 is an executive director of LASA to report on the ongoing development and implementation of city homelessness and poverty policies, work programs, operation, and other items of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Lind.
Good afternoon, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to give a set of kind of a quick update on the strategies as a package. We have a number of responsibilities within the homeless strategies that were identified by the city and also the county. Some of those overlap, some of them are in different areas. We have initiated work on all of the strategies that we are the lead on. Most of the priority ones are well underway in terms of funding. We have a quarterly, the first quarterly report that's due to the city is in September. So we have a set of reports that are associated with that. Although we are meeting our monthly obligations to keep the team Gantt updated, and we are using that team tool internally at LASA to project manage all of our strategies. On the county side, the first quarterly report was already due in the last fiscal year. Those reports were filed. They were well received by our county colleagues. They have a report that should be coming out within the next couple of weeks about the initial phase on the county strategy. So we should have an update from County CEO's Office Homeless Initiative presently. They've also adopted an evaluation framework. It includes 2 tiers. One is a set of key performance metrics, and then a very high-level headline measures. That evaluation report is going to be an annual one, and their first target for an annual evaluation will be January of 2018. So it'll cover this fiscal year in arrears. Obviously, the quarterly updates will keep coming, but that's the evaluation framework that they've put forward on the county side. On LASA side, we are working on an information a publicly available informational dashboard that will cover all of the strategies and keep the public updated, all of it, so that everyone can access where the strategies are. So we're working with both our city and county colleagues, and we will be publishing that dashboard by October. So we have a current framework for information with regard to veteran housing and homelessness. We are working on our families and single adults one. This is an additional dashboard to provide the information about where the strategies are and how their implementation is going. You've heard about a couple of specific strategies. 6A on storage facilities, we talked about that in terms of where that's moving forward. There are two that are coming, before you very shortly, and we would encourage your action. We have a report to the CAO which had asked for a scheme to prioritize locations around the city. So we did some work to balance the density and the need across the city, as well as obviously working with the council office about locations that are identified. You heard also obviously about some of the work that's going on first responders. We are working very closely with both LAPD and the Sheriff's Department on the strategies that those two are engaged on. We are, I won't repeat all of the work that's going on there, but we are closely engaged with both PD and sheriffs, and we're working with the first responder training on the development of the curriculum, ensuring that it's responsive to the needs of the community, and also, as I indicated before, we're working with our homeless advisory group of formerly homeless individuals to ensure that those curricula have actually been viewed and vetted by people experiencing homelessness. One of the sets of strategies that we have been given leadership on is are focusing on the coordinated entry system, and particularly elements of the coordinated entry system, like expanding our rapid rehousing program, ensuring that our shelter infrastructure is transformed into something that is much more responsive to the needs of a system, and it is 24 hours. It includes a dense, rich offering of reserve beds for people who are in navigation, and that we are integrating all of these into a common system architecture. LASA put an RFP on the street in May in anticipation of the approval of the funding authority from the city and from the county. That included $34 million of resources, most of which was from the city, but it covered 7 different funding areas. Regional coordination for both the single adult and youth coordinated entry systems, coordinated case management and outreach, so that is, street services for folks, and that is one of the areas that was reported to us as being the thinnest on this, available to the coordinated entry system. Crisis and reserve beds, again, both for single adults and for youth, and that is city and county-wide. And rapid rehousing, again, for both single adults and youth. So those 7 different funding areas went out. We received 86 proposals from providers in all of those areas, and we are evaluating them currently. The evaluation is almost complete. We're going to take those to the LASA Commission for approval this August. Contracts will be executed in September for contract start dates in October. So our intention is to move very, very rapidly to get that money on the street. In 2 of the key funding areas that I want to highlight, rapid rehousing and the crisis housing, we have already initiated contracts last year using the providers that we have. So we have this RFP on the street to enhance that, but we already had contracts with providers. We modified those to put the rapid rehousing and crisis 24-hour crisis bed in place. So both of those are up and running now. And at this point, we have, through the rapid rehousing program, housed 256 individuals, and we have over 1,000 people engaged and enrolled in that program. So that is just within the last few months of a ramp up, and the scale that is targeting scaling at the level of funding that was afforded to this through the city, which is $15 million. It is our intention to get to that scale and maintain that scale. And we think through the provider network that we have now and through the RFP responses, we will get to that and be able to use those funds. We are also working, within the provider base that we have now of shelter moving that to 24-hour and working with each of those individual providers to ensure that they're connected to and they're integrating with the coordinated entry system and their role in providing reserve beds for that infrastructure. One of the other key pieces of strengthening the coordinated entry system is strengthening the coordinated entry system's technical interface, and it's the infrastructure that's available for recording the data that we were just talking about, which is our HMIS platform. After considerable effort with our former vendor, our current vendor, we decided to go out to bid to get a new product. We have modified it as well as we could. We decided that we wanted to get a new vendor, and we have proposals from some of the top vendors in the country. We're evaluating those now. We should go to award in September to get a new state-of-the-art HMIS infrastructure. I think that's been a challenge for our continuum for some time. We have the largest, most complex HMIS portfolio in the country. We have one of the most significant technical challenges in terms of scale of putting that together. But we have a good set of offerings from some, like I said, some of the leading vendors. We're confident that we can make a conversion seamlessly and get a new infrastructure in place that will be much more responsive to the needs of the coordinated entry system and the kinds of data that you're looking for, where we can follow people from outreach, crisis, into housing placement, watch their retention, and ensure that we are able to report those data very, very effectively. We're working with our community-based partners to ensure that they have a good understanding and appreciation for and have vetted the vendors that we're looking at. We are also working, we have a collaborative right now with the other continuums of care in our region, which include Pasadena, Glendale, and Orange County. Long Beach is on a separate platform, but we're working with them as well. So all of our region is looking at this RFP and viewing it as an opportunity to engage in a technology upgrade. I wanted to talk for a minute about metrics. So we have been working with the city. We provided information to the committee about the metrics that we proposed. We're working with the mayor's office, with CAO, CLA. We have a set of top-level indicators to sort of quantify the progress that we're making against various benchmarks as the strategies and implementation moves forward. We've already begun quantifying the progress that's evaluated through our general fund contracting, which is the bulk of the funds that were provided to us from the city. And that's on a quarterly basis. Each of the metrics that we've proposed, has a different, can have a different frequency of reporting that's meaningful to the way that the data is captured. Some of those might be quarterly, some of them might be monthly, some of them might be annual. So for example, annual total housing placements, that's a monthly indicator that we're going to be providing to the city. That's all of the rapid rehousing funds that are going out there, and we're capturing the rest of the housing placements that come in. So we have, those that are impacted by the city funding, whether it's through the crisis beds and the reserve beds that navigate people through, but also critically from the funding that the rapid rehousing provides. Those we can report on a monthly basis. Average length of time from an assessment to a placement, which gets to the question that you were asking before about those metrics. We will be reporting those on a quarterly basis. Street engagements and contacts and HOPE referrals and those kind of things, clean street sign-offs, those are all monthly assessments, and our HMIS assessments, obviously we do those on a monthly basis as well. There's a full list. I won't go through every single one of them, but we would definitely value your response and your input and feedback on whether those metrics are responsive to what needs you see. We think this is a pretty good set to start with. Obviously, what reports we make available on those, as we start making those reports available, you will have those on a monthly basis. We are also working on public-facing dashboards. Like I said, we have a dashboard that's publicly available with regard to veterans data and housing placements and shelter utilization and all of the other infrastructure that's associated with housing veterans. That was the first one that we invested in. It is a really comprehensive, very technically sophisticated dashboard. We are building out the infrastructure for the dashboards that will cover families and single adults. And so, we're not ready with those yet, but as soon as those are ready, we will be publishing those out. And the intent of those is not to have a sort of pretty image of things, but to really use the data to hammer down cycle time, so that if, the time that it's taking from assessment to placement is 6 months, it's unacceptably long. We need to get those time frames down, and the data that we can gather from those dashboards and from those indicators is going to be used to improve the process. I wanted to give a quick budgetary snapshot. We are closing out our prior fiscal year. So the first spending that we have on our initial fiscal year, we do not have that, but we have closed out. We're closing out our prior fiscal year. We are on track to spend down all the funding that we had projected. Our current year's contract with HSID was executed on the 3rd. Our first installment on payments is going to be coming in this week, as I understand it. But as I indicated before, the funding that we had for crisis housing and rapid rehousing and several of those other programs already well underway and is already flowing out through our current contractor base. LAHSA's own internal capacity is something that we have focused on quite heavily, because the new responsibilities that we have would certainly have strained the infrastructure that we had from a human resources and just operational plant perspective. So with the concurrence of our colleagues in CAO and the mayor's office, we had begun hiring into the expectation that we would get these funding sources, so that we are not in the position of starting hiring now. We have hired over the past 6 months 35 additional headcount. These are in positions from program monitors, from ERT staff, all the way up to managerial levels to oversee that. We've instituted a completely revised onboarding process to train our staff, and we're working with outside vendors to provide management training, leadership training, organizational development, and other kinds of communication and other kinds of internal staff development. We have leadership training for our management team, which we have increased the depth of. We are in the process of filling our last senior position right now, and we should have a full complement of senior staff at LAHSA, but we have more depth in all parts of the organization. So most of that hiring is already well underway and or has already taken place. We have had to increase our physical plant, so we're taking over the 5th floor of the building that we're currently in and expanding in space there, in order to ensure that our ERT are more responsive to the needs of the community, and also that they don't likewise overwhelm the physical location that we have. We've decentralized those teams. So most of those teams now are field-based. They are working out of sites that we have arranged with our colleagues in other public agencies, with our contractors and community-based organizations. A lot of folks have given us gratis rents. Some of us have, we've worked out other kinds of arrangements, but most of the teams now are field-based. So they're much more closely engaged with the work that's going on with our community-based partners, with our CES leads, or, for example, with the HOPE teams. That allows reduces our travel time, it improves our engagement, and there's just a number of benefits, not least of which is not overwhelming the amount of space that we had at our headquarters. We have likewise worked to keep an eye on the organizational capacity of our vendor community, and so we are working with, again, with the city infrastructure, with our partners at CAO and CLA, but also with the CEO's office at the county, to put together a set of offerings for our community-based partners. This includes paying for training for frontline staff, so we have put together a curriculum. We have put together a training platform that will assist with community-based organizations getting a essentially free frontline training for staff. We are also working with them to provide a slate of, if you will, sort of back office operations and depth in their own internal facilities and operations through a partnership with a community-based organization that facilitates that kind of nonprofit management. And I think that we're continuously engaging with both the technical assistance provider organizations in our community and also our community-based providers who are doing the work, and listening to the feedback about what they need and what's going to be responsive to the organizational strains that they're facing, taking in these new sets of resources and expanding to fill this need. There is There's a lot of hiring going on in the space, both within our community-based organizations, obviously within our organization. But this is one of the focus areas we did not want to lose sight of, was that the technical capacity of our providers is one of the areas that we do not want to overstrain. And we're working with a number of different folks about looking at providing training that would touch on trauma-informed care and other aspects of dealing with homelessness. And I think those are very useful both for internal staff, for example, at an organization like LASA, but also with direct service staff. We have we were the proud recipients of the award from a national challenge for technical assistance on youth. It was a 100-day challenge that was put forward by Away Across America, and Los Angeles was picked as one of 3 cities in America to receive this award. It's a 100-day challenge to place 100 youth into permanent housing, and so we are ramping up. We'll start that in September, and LASA is the lead. We're working with coalitions of youth providers to ensure that gets underway.
What's the definition of youth by age for this?
It's 18 to 24. That's in the transition age youth category. So we're very excited about that, and we will keep you posted, and we will make sure that our communications on it are robust. I hope you saw some of the media that coverage that we already got on it. The Continuum of Care NOFA is open right now. It will be closed for new projects from HUD's perspective on August 16th. So LASA put out a NOFA to receive new projects. We've been working with those projects and evaluating them. We'll be putting those forward. We're eligible for potential bonus of up to $5 million. It looks like we may be reallocating some money, but it has nowhere near the depth and impact that we had in the last cycle. So that we are both that is a much smaller impact on our portfolio, but it is also something that we have a much better handle on and getting to earlier. And that concludes my report and update. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lynn. Questions or comments? Colleagues, Senator Cedillo? Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Peter, for the report. Just a couple questions for you. I look forward to the more detailed quarterly report in September. You talked about the RFP that went out in May and having 7 funding programs, funding areas. I recall from when we were developing the comprehensive homelessness strategy that the chair of this committee and I both incorporated into that a greater use of or reliance upon shared housing. And I wonder if you can tell me how or where that's reflected in those 7 funding areas.
So that is one of the uses for the rapid rehousing. So it's clearly within the realm of the rapid rehousing funding that's coming from the city, and also some of that is county. We have county general funds for youth, and that is also we were focusing on shared housing. It is also an area that we are working on, essentially our technical capacity. It's an area that I think our provider base needs additional technical assistance in hammering out. So we're working to get consulting to put that together. So we're working with our providers and also with consultants to get a very clear framework for how to implement shared housing using the rapid rehousing funding that we have. But the local funds, both the city and the county, are quite flexible. They give us a lot of opportunity to explore the use of shared housing. I think it's a great use for rapid rehousing.
And I've sensed some resistance among traditional service providers to use that model. It's just not something they're sort of experienced in. LASA will be playing a role in encouraging that?
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. So we have a rapid rehousing coordinator embedded in our CES team, and he is in continuous communication with folks. So that is a platform that we're using to engage and talk through. There are challenges with shared housing. It differs from what we've been used to, and so I think we need to learn some new tools. We need to learn how to put together house agreements so that people have rules to live by. We need to come up with shared lease arrangements that don't prejudice people's interests in terms of maintaining their housing. So there are communities that use master leasing agreements. There are communities that have, just left it up to people. I think there are different ways. We've had some use of third-party brokers to affect the arrangements. We're looking at a variety of different potential uses for that.
Because I'd like to see us not rely just on rapid rehousing vouchers. I know that in my district share, self-help and recovery exchange, they match folks up if they have SSI. That'll pay the rent. They need to come up with a different revenue stream to pay for groceries,
Yes.
whatever. But in many of those cases, they don't need the rapid rehousing voucher if they have Social Security.
That's right. So, and in fact, it could be that the rapid housing funds merely assist with move-in. They assist with a security deposit. That if that's the only barrier to get somebody into an arrangement like that, that's all we would, that's all we need to fund. So the funds are very flexible, and the CES leads are working to ensure that they're meeting their needs of people. I think the ability to be very nimble with that money is something that we're very grateful for, and I think it gives us an enormous opportunity to explore different uses and diversion and other kinds of things that are very helpful.
Okay, I'll look forward to deeper dive on that in September.
Yes, sir.
On my other question was about the shelters. I was glad to hear you talk about moving to the 24-hour, more welcoming shelters that with greater capacity. Is any of that change in philosophy going to be applying this year to the winter shelter program?
So the winter shelter program has traditionally been funded at a level to be a 14-hour overnight shelter. So we would have to explore the potential for funding that would make it 24-hour. It's not currently funded at that level. However, some of the other tools and the work that we were doing in terms of ensuring that, for example, there's more openness to people coming with their animals, whether those are support animals or the openness of our providers and the engagement of our providers to take on those kinds of issues that have been a little bit challenging but are a real barrier of access to shelter. I think those are things that will definitely spill over into the application on the winter shelter program.
Well, as we look towards moving towards the winter shelter program, and I imagine we'll be doing that fairly quickly,
yes, sir.
I think it would be wise to explore with the facilities, which are not always the easiest places to deal with, which would be open to 24 hours. And then if that's the case, then let's have the budget discussion.
Yes, sir. I appreciate how conversant you are with this topic, because that is one of the features of the winter shelter program that I did not mention, which is that, if it's in an armory and the guard needs to use it during the day, or it's in a church and the congregation needs to use it during the day, they're not ideally suited to a 24-hour location. So those are all conversations that we need to have with folks and see what we can work through.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Cedillo. Senator Price.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Peter, again, thank you. Earlier in your remarks, you referenced an RFP that was out, and I wasn't
Yes, sir.
clear. Was that for services? Was that for facilities? What was?
It was for services. So we
So
put
who are you
on
going
the
out to? Is that still open? Is it still out on the street?
No, sir. It's closed. We got proposals from all service planning areas in all funding areas. So one area was for regional coordination for CES. So we were adding additional capacity within the provider organizations that are the leads and the regional hubs to facilitate the kinds of work that they need to do that would otherwise be unfunded. We want to make sure that they have a robust set of staffing, that they can meet the challenges of expanding this infrastructure. That is, we put out funding for both the adult system and the transition age youth. That was done in conjunction with the Home for Good Funders Collaborative, so it was aligned perfectly with the funding that they put out as well, which is in that same area and is coming from philanthropy. We're not trying to displace but augment all of those funds. In addition, there was funding for rapid rehousing, and that's just on the services side, although it does fund operational staff, of course, and that is for both adults and youth. And there's crisis housing for both adults and youth, and that does cover staffing and the rent of facilities, but not, none of it is for facilities in the sense of capital. And there's one other area. which is escaping my attention.
So let's say for a church or the nonprofit.
Outreach, excuse me. Yes.
For a church or a nonprofit that wanted to provide that, that service, is there going to be another round, another opportunity to?
Well, this was the sort of main opportunity to go out and get, we had a number of different, if it's undersubscribed, we would certainly put it out again.
Doesn't appear to
That's
be
correct.
undersubscribed.
That's correct.
Sounds like you're saying it was
That's
fully
right.
subscribed. When are the decisions going to be made?
Those decisions will go to the LASA Programs and Evaluations Committee next week, and then approval by the Commission at the end of this month.
Thank you so much, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you.
We will receive your report. We have a couple of public comment speakers. We have Angelica Orozco, and we have someone I believe to be Wayne Spindler.
Is it all my cards or just the one card? So the card went down as puto number 2, puto 2. So este programas son no beneficios a los latinos. Estos son putos. No son dinero para los pobres. Son solo los putos. Y arreglan este fondos sin beneficios a la comunidad latina. La comunidad latina solo putito de este consejo. Este consejo son los muchísimos putos en el mundo. Este es porque mi tarjeta dice puto número 2. No quiero estos programas, no quiero estos putos, pinche putos.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, is there anything else for the good of the order?
This is clear, sir.
Thank you so much. We're adjourned.